Good evening. Welcome to Gargate. Today is Wednesday, March 6, 2024.
24.
Yesterday, I announced it to you. We are going to talk with an expert in forensic matters. I'm going to read everything here, everything that an expert does. William Jimenez Gaviria, lawyer, specialist in criminal law, expert in criminal and forensic investigation, former coordinator of strategic investigations of the National Service of Medicine and Forensic Sciences in Venezuela, which is the exclusive legal investigation body for forensic activity in relation to violent deaths. Affiliated member of the Inter-American Federation of Lawyers in Washington, D.C. Witness promoted before the prosecutor's office of the International Criminal Court in relation to the Yunquito massacre, in which Oscar Perez and his companions were murdered. Interviewed by the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights regarding human rights violations in Venezuela from Peru. Interviewed by the United Nations Independent International Mission that has been investigating human rights violations in Venezuela since 2017. And he, William Jimenez, is currently under international protection by the Kingdom of the Netherlands by decision granted by a district court in The Hague in the Netherlands. Good night, morning almost for you, William. How are you?
Good evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks for serving us, William. We want to talk to you. I hope the audience has understood why you, the expert that you have, the experience that you have, on the subject of Lieutenant Ronald Ojeda. Because last night, his brother Javier told us, that is not my brother. And the reason why Javier has reacted this way is because of all the obstacles that the Chilean authorities have put in place so that the family that is in Chile, the immediate family who are wife and sister, recognize the corpse. Finally today, they were allowed to see the body. I have not yet been able to speak with Javier, with Ronald's brother, but I have information that the way of showing them the body was not that they discovered the body, etc., but rather that they showed it as if in small parts. They opened some parts and showed them to them, etc. In addition to this, what I have as part of the main doubt in this entire procedure is that I repeat, I believe that the investigation has been absolutely irregular. Because at this moment, and I'm going to make a summary to let you speak, William, in this thing, and I think that the main doubt, speaking on the forensic issue, William, is the age of the body. That is, how long has it been? Did they kill Ronald Ojeda? That is fundamental. The other thing that is not talked about is the motive for the crime. Because already, and I have explained that to you, and there are people more specialized than me in this who have much more experience, because the Aragua train does not act in the way it acted. It is Benitez in this case. Especially the suspect, who is now being linked, by the way, to Tarek El-Aizami. And I'm going to later analyze why the intention to relate it to Tarek El-Aizami. Why the intention? Well, it turns out that this man had participated in other kidnappings previously in Chile, but none of them had been with the equipment that was set up for this kidnapping. That is, the way in which this kidnapping was carried out has absolutely no relationship with the kidnappings at Nimes. This guy has participated before. The kidnappings were extortionate, as is usually the case with the Aragua train. He kidnaps a person and asks for money in exchange for being returned to his living family. And this is what it is about, not what we are seeing in the case of Ronald Ojeda. Based on your experience, which I know the case has come up with, William, what do you think about how this has developed? When there is a kidnapping and there is a close family that can identify, for example, that is the first question I want to ask you. There is a family nearby who can immediately identify the body. What is logical, what is usual, what is legal, what is appropriate is to call the family first, reveal the body and tell them if it is or is not, or what it is, how to work, and how to act in these cases.
Those important aspects that must be taken into account, which play a fundamental role in an event of violent death such as this to which we are referring. One part is done by criminology and the other by legal medicine. Both complement each other, from which the public ministry relies, with all the corresponding procedures to clarify the facts, within what the corpse identification protocol is, in addition to all forensic practice, where experts, specialists play an important role. We're talking about anthropology, psychology, the pathologist, and the forensic doctor himself. In all this activity, family members, friends, or people who manage to provide information that contributes to determining the identification of that body of the already obsessed person is essential. In this case, in any act of this type, and I say this from the point of view of the work that I carried out for some time for the forensic service in Venezuela, family members are an important figure for identification because they will provide information. They are people who have known the person, well, who is deceased today, to that assissus, and they are going to contribute elements there, right? Now, we are seeing that certain things have been changing in the form or treatment. We are seeing how the details are being taken care of a little more than at the beginning. Because what has also happened is that the communication pressure, the tension that this case has generated, which has practically reached international public opinion and the entire world, because many people from Europe have been very aware of this matter. It is not just any punishable act. And that is the concern, I believe, which is the zeal that has been adopted by the authorities who in one way or another have an influence, because it is the executive branch that has jurisdiction through its ministries and competent bodies in the management of what is forensic policy. Now, there are things that attract attention. One that has been following up due to the interest of criminal science in this matter is that nowhere have we heard, for example, when they were doing the location work, when that body was already found. We have not heard anything related to what is natural in a body that has already been in these conditions for several days. If he died, as the prosecutor leading this investigation has said, they have not talked about the swimming odors, which is also something that could indicate to us the days that may have passed since the death occurred. Now, in this case, we no longer have any doubt. According to what the lawyer has said, as he has stated, affirmed that it was the wife, the relatives who have made it known, have recognized that this body corresponds to the identity of the person who was located in that place and who was forcibly kidnapped under strange circumstances. We have no doubt about that. There is something that stands out about the statements. One does not know under what pressure these statements were made, and what surprises me is that the announcement is made on the same day that a decision related to the issue of Venezuela is being issued. In other words, there are two aspects. A situation that has to do with the investigation led by the prosecutor's office of the International Criminal Court with respect to the crimes of that humanity, which is a situation that has even received unprecedented international attention, regarding which the Maduro regime in Nicaragua is being investigated in all cases, facts that have been reported by the victims. And another, that we have this important fact that an important witness has been murdered, which is not just anything. We're talking about a Venezuelan army officer, and today he appears murdered in these circumstances. We are also struck by the fact of the entire criminal infrastructure, 3 vehicles, the group, the number of people who have participated. This is not something typical of a common or ordinary crime group. We have no history, for example, with respect to situations similar to these, that the Aragua train has its objective the kidnapping of some officials. For what reason? What would it be? The purpose? We're talking about an army officer? Who, by the way, here is a situation that must be taken into consideration that could allow us to elucidate within what the scheme of setting up the chess of this matter would be. That Officer Lieutenant Ronald Ojeda Moreno was present the day Capintal Angel Heredia was captured. And there is one thing that hasn't been talked about much. This has been said, which is already more than affirmed by many sources. But one of the aspects that must be taken into account here is that the Venezuelan military intelligence managed to obtain the telephone number of the cellular equipment that Captain Heredia had, and it is very Tachian. It is likely that this has provided the authorities of the Nicolas Maduro regime, especially military intelligence, with a great deal of information that allows them to establish, for example, important data on the location, residence, personal information on communications that Angel Arella had with him today. Deceased obsessor, unfortunately, right? Now, with respect to the issue of the circumstances of death, because just as the prosecutor said, which refers to the cause of death being mechanical asphyxiation, the following must be taken into account. When we talk about this type of situation, we are talking about the person being immobilized in a way that was brought to a forced situation that generated a reduction of oxygen to the brain, and consequently, what is respiratory cardiac arrest occurs. There are many ways to reach this type of situation, and they are very typical of the torture that is being applied in Venezuela in some cases. For example, we have a fact where even there is still a lot to explain, and no one understands what happened with the death of a political figure, such as Councilor Fernando Albana, who, by the way, is the prosecutor who is today assuming the direction of the public ministry in Venezuela 1 year. Then he said it was no longer suicide, but homicide. And there is sufficient information and testimony from officials who have indicated that Fernando Alman was subjected to such torture, which even led to respiratory arrest and consequently death. So taking into account that we are dealing with an army officer who was on public networks in Chile, even some social communicators and government actors who try to make an effort to have a tendency to affirm that this is a modus operandi of the water train. This is an operation in which I have no doubt that national organized crime is involved, operating from the high political power that today controls the system in Venezuela. This is an operation where there is even enough information about how involved the Director of Special Affairs of the DATECourtesy, such as Alexander Granco, is in this event.
I want to cut you off there, because what you are saying is exactly like that. So they are making a relationship. Let's see if production can get me everything they are publishing on the networks, making the relationship with this last individual and Tariq El-Aissami, relating it in what way that he was an escort for Tariq El-Aissami, who belonged to your security group, etc., etc. This may be true. What I am sure is not true is that this guy was the one who led that operation. Why are they making this relationship?